This opening roundtable will delve into the relationship between physical and digital post-pandemic in the fashion industry, whilst exploring new opportunities to preserve culture and heritage.
Introducing the moderator for this conversation, Paula Vega Tagle, founding partner at lablaco. Paula, please take it away.
Welcome everyone to the opening roundtable. I'm super thrilled to be here together with Chris Dercon, the President at Réunion des Musées Nationaux-Grand Palais, Pascal Morand, Executive President at Fédération de la Haute Couture et de Mode, Matt Hermans, founding partner at spacegrey, and Eliana Kuo, the co-founder and co-CEO at lablaco. In this panel, we'll try to delve into the relationship between the physical and the digital post-pandemic fashion future, while decoding the new opportunities to preserve culture and heritage. So this panel is everything about redesigning new spaces, new ways of interacting with people, and also new ways of creating content. And with the learnings from the pandemic in mind, this year of the summit's topic was about redesigning society. From your perspective, in what ways do you think society needs to be redesigned?
The layout of exhibitions, the layout of museums will become very much different. I mean, people want comfort spaces today and want to feel comfortable in these spaces. So we're finally going to stop making sure that we load our exhibitions because of financial, economical reasons with packs of people, because people do not take it anymore. And they don't take it anymore because to go to a museum is a conscious decision because you have to take a reservation. But because you want to take a reservation and you need to take a reservation, you visit museums and cultural spaces differently. For instance, you say, well, I have the chance to go somewhere. I took the decision, I have the possibility, and there is a slot. That means I'm going to maybe want to use these spaces differently, like long duration. I not just go to visit the museum, I also want to spend a while because I feel comfortable and I have decided this. I'm going to spend longer in the museum, and I call that the long duration. So comfort, long duration. An exhibition display is going to be quite different because it's becoming a matter of inventing a public form, a form for the public, not just for the artworks, but for the public. And that's even going to influence the architecture and design of cinema space, theater space, what it means to be in a collective space together as a collective. So I wish I could turn to what I did in the past, work with architects and designers and teach architecture and designers.
Pascal, Paris Fashion Week is always trying to embrace innovation. Can you share some learnings of hosting the Digital Fashion Week, opening also to a larger audience, and just the possibilities provided by the digital space?
I will talk like in more general terms like Chris did, and not specifically about fashion. Fashion is part of the story. But as Chris said, we're in a big change, which is obvious to say, but what does that mean? What we know is that the pandemic has fully accelerated the digitalization of society in any economy, in any aspect. This is the point. It has been much quicker than it would have been. Probably we wouldn't talk with the same way. Maybe Zoom did exist for sure, and WebEx did exist, but it was much less natural. So what has happened in 6 months would have taken 6 years. What has happened in 1 year would have taken 10 years. So, and to me, that's the first point. To me, we fully entered into the 21st century. And what I mean by that, the 21st century, what I mean is that technologically, meaning in the past, the digital was completing the physical, and now the physical is completing the digital. And so it's reversed. But to say that this simple reverse effect is a considerable move in any aspect if we applied it to anything. And then, so this happens, and then in the next years, we will keep on moving, and both universes will be integrated, because now you cannot open, listen to the radio, or open a media without seeing the word metaverse. And 3 years ago it was AI, and 3 years ago it was 3D printing, and 3 years ago it was, and 3 years before each time, it was augmented reality and so on. The point is, there is one word, which is virtualization. 3D printing makes links between the physical objects and the virtual objects. And same story with the NFTs and so on. But the point is, it's a process of virtualization. And this virtualization leads us to this new full accomplishment of this, let's say, 21st century. What I mean by that is that it happens exactly what happened in more than 1 century ago with the second and the third industrial revolution. Now some people use the word of the third industrial revolution with the digital one, and sometimes the fourth one, but the fourth one is very much linked. There are also other technological innovations in terms of biotechnologies, etc. But all this is led by the fact that software, as it is often said, is eating the economy and also the society. So to me, that's one aspect which is extremely important. And then there is a second aspect, of course, which is the sustainable revolution and sustainability challenge, which is a revolution which only depends on our actions. But if you look at the let's say COP26, many things happen. It can be disappointing somehow, but anyhow, it's very much macro aspect. So it's macro objectives. But the point is to establish the link between the macro and the micro. And that is always tricky and complicated. This is thing that we work on, and Chris and his teams also is working on that constantly. But then we get to technical matters, complicated technical matters, but very stimulating technical matters. So that's the second, let's say, revolution, which will depend on our actions. And I could say many other things about that. And all this now is interacting. Both revolutions are interacting, and are interacting also with the fact that we know also that the digital revolution has a big environmental impact, which can be reduced, but which is often neglected because it is seen. You see, just many people see only the physical impact, because the physical impact can be seen, and the digital impact is not so obvious to be seen in terms of much more than streaming and many other things. But all this is creating this big move, which is also a technological move, and with the challenge of the scarce resources, and so all this has many consequences. So I absolutely fully agree with what Chris said, which is that the designers and the architect and the designers in general, including the fashion designers, of course, who have a very important role to play. But let's say, I take design in the global sense, have a big role to play, not only to make new furniture, not only to make new objects, but to design what will happen.
But maybe for designers, it's also interesting to think about the following. That is, we know that where fashion comes from, the newest of the new, and how do I make myself different from the others, okay? But now, fashion is becoming a very, very important form of public space by itself. How do I behave in public? And what does the way I dress myself, what does that mean for my public encounters? Does that mean that I want to stand out like it used to be in the past? Or does that mean that I want to belong? Also, we've seen that in fashion, of course, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that I belong to a group, that I express trust, that I express sociability, that I express communality. I mean, that could be really interesting for fashion designers, that some of the older criteria and conditions of this permanent revolution of the self, which is fashion, that it's probably becoming the expression of another revolution in other contexts with different criteria. And for me, that's fascinating. I'm looking at the shops and I see the window dressing and I say to myself, hey, watch out. You know, you have to brand your stuff maybe in a different way than you used to do before. So it's not just a matter of designing, it's also expressing what this design could mean for you. And that maybe is going to influence these new forms of catwalks, which we see digitally, new forms of films. And when I look at some of the fashion designers and the marketeers, the fact that they go to the countryside to execute simple rituals like Marine Serre has been doing in her little videos. I mean, it's quite different from a kind of highly polished style of standing out, different forms of glamour, more simple things, straightforward things, different way of communicating.
And for you, Matt, I'm thinking what elements were important also when designing a digital twin of an existing building such as the Grand Palais Éphémère, and just thinking also how you worked backwards from having the physical item and then into the digital one.
So, you know, the destination for all of this is yet to be understood and appreciated. It could even be for another generation. You know, the digital existence is effectively unlimited. We can be in a bubble world and we're all tentacle creatures, you know, swimming around each other. But for now, we're still in a transition zone where, you know, the concepts of skeuomorphism, that if we build facsimiles of the real world in the digital world, then we understand naturally how to interact with that. You know, you see a tree in virtual reality and you go, I understand that this is an immovable structure. It's green, it's life. But truly in digital, it could be anything. It could come alive and start dancing around with you. But we're not quite ready to shock people that much. So part of the transition of taking the Grand Palais last year was to appreciate the volume that it gave for exhibitions. And so we effectively created a fence that this is the understood boundary of this space. But then within the space, we filled it with giant bubbles. Every booth was a bubble. We had a giant monstera, you know, like a mutated, monstrous plant in the middle that everyone could congregate around. So I like the idea that you can keep on purpose some of the traditional, there's a door, I know I pass through it, but then once we're through that door, we can start remixing. This year is a little bit different. The Éphémère is a different kind of structure. And so we're a little bit less, there's less tradition to look after in that first regard I mentioned. But we're keeping the bubble concepts. We're keeping the idea that we can teleport, that the space is actually probably 5 times bigger than the physical real estate is. Once we start teleporting through these alternate, you could call them dimensions, but they're effectively virtual real estate. I think we've got at least 30 of these booths where partners present all of their artifacts. And that's much more than could really fit in the physical building. So we're taking it gently so that people feel that this is more of an extension of reality rather than a shocking replacement, which is what it really is.
And Chris, what elements were important when designing a physical extension of the Grand Palais Éphémère?
Grand Palais Éphémère was designed for the purpose of our activities, but also for the purpose of the Olympics. And it's designed almost as a giant black box, a giant cinema studio, because you know that for the Olympics, since a number of years, the live presentations are basically like mise en scènes to putting things in the media, in television. So it's a huge black box, it's a huge theater space. And that makes it very interesting. It's very dramatic space because, when you look out, it feels like a camera obscura because the shadow of the Eiffel Tower is almost falling into the space. And it's quite interesting that the Grand Palais Éphémère is connected to the Eiffel Tower because you know that the Eiffel Tower is almost like a female silhouette. It has these erotics and esoterics undertones, while being at the same time a modernistic technical machine. And I think the womb of the Grand Palais Éphémère has kind of soft esoterics and erotics as well, with that, and I'm not getting into Freud, with that huge Eiffel Tower in the back. But it's a very dramatic space. It has its history, and people so far have been incredibly pleased to work in it, because I present it as the lunar wing compared to the solar wing of the Grand Palais. And you know that today the world of cultural infrastructure has, of course, always the lunar wing and the solar wing interconnected. And I hope that what Matt and you guys are going to do, that you can express that idea of the solar and the lunar wing.
Yun, what is the vision behind the Spin Metaverse? I'm very curious to know, since the last edition, you're always having a tradition of pushing the envelope and breaking boundaries. So why did you decide to create a metaverse for Spin?
So before lablaco, actually, I was working in luxury fashion industry. And if you ever work in fashion or luxury fashion, you know that how much effort everyone put in creating the product, from like brainstorming and like product testing, etc. So it was so frustrating to see how the current fashion system works. Like a beautiful collection made by probably 200 designers, and after a few months presented in the store, probably they would be sent to the outlet or being destroyed. And so then it becomes basically waste. So that's why we created the system of product digitization powered by blockchain that can easily document the beautiful story and enable circular business models, not only for businesses, but also for final customers, to seamlessly keep products in the loop. And so this is Spin. We encourage users to spin fashion products instead of consume fashion products. And the system we created to digitize the product we call the circular retail. It's like a next generation fashion commerce, evolved from traditional retail where you go into the store, You can buy the product curated by the buyers, you can try it on, you can touch the fabric. And then we have new retail when the internet 2.0 disrupted everything. Every brand has a digital virtual store. It's like a 2D category of product showcase. You can scroll and buy the products from all over the world without any boundaries of physical boundaries. And now actually we're entering the Web3, so the metaverse, where finally the physical and digital worlds can perfectly merged and aligned. So we're transforming digital experience from 2D into 3D experience. And actually, circular retail is perfect, made for metaverse, because once you digitize products, it automatically unlocks the butterfly effect. So you can open so many doors of applications, new applications. So entering the metaverse is like what we already have experienced until today. So in the past, from no internet to internet, and now we're just entering from 2D internet into 3D internet. It's a natural process. It's like human being, we always evolved, we invent, and we get inspired by the past and we create new things. Some people may think that metaverse is just another buzzword for the business. But I think if you are an inventor or entrepreneur or creator in 2021, you cannot ignore that this will be the next phase of the internet. When the supporting hardwares are ready, everyone will be inside the metaverse, like how we're using internet every day today with smartphones. So back to Spain, thanks to the blockchain-powered IoT circular retail system embedded, we want to empower creations with meanings, with culture, history, humanity, passion, creativity, just like luxury products that can be spinned or passed on over and over to continue its timeless story, generation after generation. Keep products in the loop across reality, across dimension, and blurring the boundaries of digital and physical limitations. Fashion is a product made with so much love and passion. It's culture, it's story of human being. I remember when I was still traveling in Milan, Paris, or Copenhagen, all these fashion cities, every time when I spoke with designers and listened to the creativity behind each single items, I just feel so touched and warm. And I hope more people can see the value, and each creation has their own unique story behind. And we want to bring this emotion into the 3D digital world, into metaverse. And this is how we envision the spin to create the value for the future generation.
And Pascal, can you share more with us about Paris Fashion Week and the Fédération's commitment to sustainability?
The passion, let's say, for the consumer or for the citizen is something which is extremely intimate. It's the reflect of oneself. There's this line I thought of this line by Balzac, who was talking about l'homme hiéroglyphé when he was talking about fashion, the hieroglyphed man. But what does that mean to be hieroglyphé, to be hieroglyphed in this new world? What is oneself? Because of course there will be a stream in some streams, since let's say the sustainable development challenges will say, oh, but fashion is not so essential, not so important. But this has this is debates which is like centuries long. And of course, the question of the desire will be fashion through a desire on how to differentiate oneself and to communicate will remain the same. But the question is in which universe we will be. And we will, so I mean, the identity that we have will be physical identity, but also a digital identity. And so fashion will touch all that. And there will be, because it is an extremely intimate design. And for designers and for fashion designers, integrating all these parameters and applying the culture, art and culture, and with their own like anticipation and design and creativity will be a fascinating challenge, and it has already started now. And we see that the fashion designers can be and been very, after having somehow destabilized by the crisis, are now very, very much motivated and stimulated by what's happening. So, and then, so this is, they say, for fashion as a concept and a reality, and for the sense of the individual and the collective identity. Now, what we do in our role here for the Fédération and for Paris Fashion Week is to value as much as possible the creative and cultural dimension. And it's always the same story, that fashion is not an art, but it can become an art when it's made by an artist. And this is what matters in any aspect. So when we were confronted to the pandemic, we didn't move, we sticked fully to the principles, the selectivity principles, to any aspect. And we transferred the principles or laws somehow in the digital sphere. And that was very interesting. So, okay, we want to remain the same, but we cannot exactly remain the same. And we know also, and we saw that in September, that the digital cannot cover any aspect of the neurophysiological experience. And that's, I could comment on fashion again and more than that. And we know that there is this balance between these two words. And what we have done, so we have, let's say, digitalized everything, and we have become a media somehow. As I sometimes say, we are all media, and individually and globally. And Marshall McLuhan has never been so true, and so obviously true. And concerning sustainability, so we decided to develop tools, because the question is how to measure and to have the sense of measuring. So we have developed tools so as to manage the events value chain for shows or for fashion shows, in the same way we do that for the industrial value chain. So it's always the question of the management of the value chain, but we have two value chains in our environment, and measuring, and then measuring in a holistic way when we have all these results and so on. And we need, the sustainable development for developing the circular economy. We need to measure in a way which is reflecting an ethical view of what we do, and this is true for the physical world, and this is true for the digital world. But at a certain moment, in fine, it relies upon ethical matters, philosophical matters, and not only technical matters. The technical decisions that we make have to be deducted from this, let's say, ethical consideration and the sense of being fair and measuring in an objective and transparent way.
Do you think that the CEOs of the big brands, they take your evaluations, your conclusions? Do they take them seriously?
Yeah, more and more, very much. We let's say, but the point is very much, and there is also the challenge, but not more for Fashion Week, but more for fashion, but more for fashion products, that you see all the creative and luxury brands and luxury fashion, you have, when you look, it's produced, let's say, more locally, it's small series and so on, and with high quality. But then there is also another challenge, which is more a challenge of public affairs all over the world, to see allegations and how it is measured. We get back to that. But I think there has been a very strong I feel, not only think, I observe there's been a very strong acceleration of this will to manage that, because first there is no choice. There is no choice, and there is a strong will, and also brands can have difficulties if they don't do that. So but I mean, somehow this is probably not linked to the pandemic, but the great difficulty of the situation. I mean, the reports are not rated the same way, and the new generations are pushing also on that. So, and I mean, it's overall here at the Federation for the brands, for our members. We don't. There are also other fields and other circles and other organizations, but it's a role to go ahead. And you know, Chris, what strikes me with the young ones, I mean, it's part of themselves more and more. And the point is the measurement, because if they do that in a way which is great, which is convinced, but with the usual criteria, leads in an unfair way to the fact that they have a bad assessment and evaluation with what they do, we do have a problem. So once again, there's a question of the macro and the micro, and for us, the circular fashion, the circular economy world, the fashion and design world, and the creative people and the artists, the creative class, so-called creative classes, we have to take the lead on that. All together, we have to be on the edge, I think, very much, because like that.
But I think what's interesting is that more and more brands, also in the car industry, everybody looks at their products as cultural objects, as cultural production. And I think what plays into that, what you're speaking about, ethical matters, let's not forget that fashion brands, they absolutely need to position themselves or to legitimate their products as a form, as an expression of culture. I mean, today when you speak about the car industry, nobody speaks anymore about the cars. I mean, mobility is still a huge issue, of course. It will become a different issue, but they say it's also an expression as a form of a culture. And that's the reason why we speak about moods. And so the cultural legitimacy of fashion, you see it definitely in fashion weeks or in collaborations with dancers, with artists, going as far, to my great astonishment, that very ethical artist, let me say Judith Chicago, a proto-feminist artist, is willing to work with a fashion brand, and that a reclusive artist like Peter Dog is also, wanting to position themselves into that world of fashion. That means also that fashion is taken much more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just anymore something which is frivole, which has only to do with elegance. It's taken much more seriously. And I was struck by a recent ad campaign in Vogue Italia, which was about trekking, about people who go on hiking. And I was thinking, wow, that's really not only practical, but it's very beautiful, the way the stylist dressed up the models in this landscape of people going for a hike. I mean, there are these kind of changes, mood changes. It's fashion is much more than a permanent revolution of the self. It's becoming a very important part of our culture, and not just in France. In France, we developed even a language to speak about fashion. And I've been I've been asked as a consultant on a new initiative, La Maison de la Francophonie, which is dealing with the development of French language. And I said, please look into how French language was developed when we tried to put a discourse about gastronomy, viniculture, and also fashion. You have these complete new ways of expressing and saying things. And I've been, talking to kids who want to come to study fashion management in Paris. And I said, you first have to learn the language, not just French, but you have to learn the semantics, about how to talk about fashion. Now, because of the pandemic, it's probably becoming a much more important language than we thought before. But we don't know the rules yet. We don't know the grammar yet. And we still have to find that grammar through what Pascal is saying, the binary productions, the hybrid productions. We don't understand it yet.
Yun, I'm curious to know, as this question has been asked a lot, what does a circular retail platform like Spin has to do with the metaverse, and what is the connection between the metaverse and sustainability?
If you think about how fashion system is designed today, regardless of the circular models, applications that most of brands are trying to implement without product digitization or connecting products with internet, like IoT, there's actually no way for us to know where the product comes from, the impact of it, where they go after the purchase, because we just have no idea. We have no way to trace, which results in no data to measure the impact. And this is where we are today. Actually, it's a science. If we want to improve something, first of all, we need to have data. Imagine the time we didn't have any data to measure the air quality. How can we improve it? And today, thanks to scientists that create the index and the methods to measure air quality, so we know exactly under a certain degree that the air quality is good and we can go out, and above a certain degree it will harm our health and we need to do something or improve the air quality with some machine or any other methods. And this is the same fashion. It's really unbelievable that we have no data and methods to measure 100 billion products produced each year until now. We're only 7.7 billion of people in the world, which means each year we already have way enough clothes to wear for at least 10 years for the entire population. So data digitization is actually the key and the first step to improve the fashion system, to make it sustainable. And to produce data for physical products like fashion, there are two layers of digitization process. Using our circular retail system. So it's digitization at physical and digital level. There are two levels. On the physical level, we digitize clothing by making them Internet of Things through like NFT or RFID, QR code, or anything powered by blockchain, which today it's well known as NFT. And once products are fully digitized physically and digitally, this is where the magic happens. We can finally move from fashion's current linear consumption model, like we're still calculating how much product we sold, units sold basically as a KPI, to circular ownership model, where we calculate KPI as number of use or access, because basically with the digital assets, you can just reuse and reuse over and over without creating any product. So metaverse is actually a perfect use cases for a digitized product through digital twins. It's like a nature process of extended reality for digitization. And within 40 billion items generated by the fashion industry and the landfill each year, this way we can really finally replace wasteful processes within the fashion value chain today, such as sampling, influencer marketing, testing. Imagine how many products we created just for marketing and gifting or sampling, and how much waste we have created and we throw away afterwards. With virtual products and virtual representatives, we can actually make it all sustainable and circular itself, because it's really easy to reuse without creating physical products. And we can also monetize fashion in a more sustainable and scalable way with much less waste. And yet, we still need to be very cautious not to fall in again into the infinite growth paradox as we are today, because at the end of the day, the capitalization, the capitalism push us to push always more products and produce more to sell more, and that's where we are today. So we need to be cautious in the future how in the digital world we can be sustainable, consume less energies and resources, and remain the rhythm of the universe and the Mother Earth, basically. It's still an unknown world, but yeah, we will see what will happen and how it will evolve.
Chris, blending the past of an iconic building and also rethinking the future of a new one, it seems that sustainability was always incorporated as an important aspect when redesigning the Grand Palais Éphémère. Can you tell us more about the role of sustainability in this new emblematic building?
There are two things which are really important to say about this. This is completely sustainable architecture. Sustainable in its soft techniques. Everything is built in wood. We use textiles. It's built in parts, so it can be taken away easily. It can be even divided in parts. But that doesn't mean that it can stay longer than 5 to 10 to 15 years. If you want to have it stay beyond 5 years, then you have to do something about it. You have to adjust, you have to adapt. When you want to have it stay longer, even after 10 years, then you have more to adjust and more to adapt, because this building is sustainable, but it's also a short-term building. It's not like the Eiffel Tower, okay? And it's because we use these very precise, very precious, sustainable materials. So there are some people who would like to have it, who take this as an example of cultural infrastructure for the future, because indeed cultural infrastructure for the future is up for grabs. Are cinemas going to look the same as it did before? The theaters, there are many examples of new forms of typologies of cultural buildings, cultural instruments. Think about the Shed in New York, think about the Manchester International, which is going to open soon in Manchester. Think about the Grand Palais Éphémère. And there are many architects very excited to think about what is cultural infrastructure for the future. This building is not going to stay, might have another function after 4 or 5 years if one can find somebody who is going to pay for adapting it, adjusting it. But everything depends on the politicians in Paris, because we got a permission to stay until well after the Olympics. That was our goal, because we moved back to the completely renovated Grand Palais in 2024. So far, this has been a truly fantastic experience. We have been working with dancers, we have been working with theater makers, with virtual reality producers, we have worked with fashion shows, we worked with the FIAC, we worked with Paris Photo. It became really a campus. So it was great to test out this cultural infrastructure. We consider it as a test, and it's a successful test.
Pascal, as the pandemic showed, room for creativity, how would you like to keep on engaging with your growing community, both locally and globally? And how are you planning to sustain Paris Fashion Week presence on both sides?
Yeah, absolutely. First, it has been very much a room for what I call an augmented creativity, in the same way we talk about augmented reality, because the creators, designers, our artistic directors who very much lead everything which is going on during not the managers, I mean themselves, the creative creators, what's happening for the show in the Fashion Week, that they developed this opportunity to work with filmmakers, to work with any and not only filmmakers, but with any creative talent being involved in the video sphere or in the digital sphere globally. So it took sometimes a bit of time, but very quickly, and the young generation got very quickly. And this is very much linked to the community, to this new community, and that tech is now very much seen, much more than before, as a creative factor. So that was something very strong, and we saw that, we observed that in any aspect, and with the videos which were done, and for let's say the whole Fashion Week events, and sometimes with cultural and digital, physical and digital cultural experiences which were sort of mixed, etc., etc. So that's important. And concerning the second question on the way we cope with all these publics and what it changed a lot. You know, there has been a time, once upon a time, but not such a long time ago, where the collections which were shown were supposed to be secret, but we know that it's an illusion now. So it is managed differently. So now it is shown and communicated, new era, not new, not fully new, but let's say new accomplished era. And that means that through the digital Fashion Week, there has been this possibility for people from all over the world to see the shows, and not only the shows. And we saw at the same time that in September, for the Women's Wear Fashion Week, this, let's say, ritualized of gathering of the people, of the professional, I mean, journalists, buyers, and all the professional sphere were desiring very much. It wasn't possible for Asian public because of the pandemic, but to see each other again, and somehow they even better knew why it was so great and important to see each other physically, and all the empathetic and all the emotional and all the sensorial factors, etc., etc. So then we have both for the public, not so much globally than saying B2B, but let's say for the professionals, it is both physical and digital, but with this emphasizing also the physical gathering. And for the digital side, it opened a full new universe and possibility of expression, and which will increase even more with the digital innovations, with the metaverse, etc., etc. So it will be great, and in a very concrete terms, you know, a professional, it is very promising. But let's say, if we talk about the official calendar and the Fashion Week in a strict sense, it represents somehow like 5,000 people, not so many. Then there are many people in the off calendars, fairs, etc., etc. But let's say with the core linked to the official calendar, the people coming in our case to Paris, etc. So now, if we take the platform that we have set up with our partner Launch Mentoring, so this platform with this magazine that we have, and also events and so on, it's not huge, but I mean, we to start from nothing, and for the whole year we have for the 6 events, let's say the 2 Fashion Weeks, menswear, women's wear, and the Couture Week, we are let's say 1 million unique visitors. And if we take the amplification system that we have set up with the Canal Group in France and with YouTube and with Tencent, more especially, we have beyond or independently of what the brands have done themselves with their own website and Instagram, social network and so on, we reach for the whole year a level of, let's say, 1 billion. So that has been globally a big change. And this is, I mean, stimulating for everybody. And it's also, it gives an access to fashion, to creative fashion, to everybody in the world. And that is, so it, I mean, that's a democratic progress.
And finally, I would love to know from you, Yun and Matt, if you can share some memories of what it was like to be behind the scenes when building the Spin Metaverse and digital Grand Palais Éphémère.
One of the biggest challenges this year compared to last were the avatars. And the avatars last year left a lot to be desired. And part of the push this year was to present the avatars as, you know, fashion-centric representations of the user behind them. And that opens quite a big, well, you said Pandora's box. I think it applies to this as well, that we've had all sorts of garments, virtual garments, come through our pipeline. Part of the unlimited nature of this virtual fashion does mean highly impractical outfits. And we are working with quite severe limitations currently with the virtual reality devices. And so it's been fascinating to try and find what is the balance between, you know, the unlimited expression that the medium affords, as well as the practical limitations of the devices that we're still using. You know, the good measurement is, you know, the PCs that we develop all of this on. You know, we've got 400, 500, 600, 800 watts of electricity, this incredible, powerful machine, whereas the virtual reality devices we're using have about 8 watts. So it's an order of magnitude or more difference between what we're developing on versus what we're consuming all of this on. So that's something I'm looking forward to having change, and luckily there's billions and billions of dollars being put into the research for these devices, and they're changing maybe every 6 months, maybe a year. Been working with holographic devices recently, soon a whole nother medium to explore for next year. Everything we know is about all of this is very temporary. In 6 months it's going to change, whether that's because of work we've done or because of other people coming into this space as well, new devices, workflows, software, industries.
So actually, wow, it's been really a journey. We have the team like in different time zone, coordinating everything, everyone in charge of different specific expertise to recreate the physical, for example, Grand Palais, and the human being, our digital twin inside the metaverse. It's really been a super complex but very exciting moment, because for me, like creating the metaverse is just like recreating everything that probably we took for granted today from ground zero, like how we talk to each other, how our face will move, the expression, and how we dress up, how we talk to each other, and the interior design, the experiences, architecture, everything. So I think also to create a fashion metaverse is even something more complicated than that, because if you think about it, fashion is an industry of people. It's a form of culture and art. It's not just like something created like from fantasy. It has meaning behind it. It registers the history of humanity. And it's also a symbol of time if you think about it. Like every garment tells a story of that time. It's like just this jacket. I bought it in the old school tailoring store in Taipei, and actually it's a dead stock. And I remember the owner said, "Oh, this jacket was super popular back in 80s, but now like no one wants to wear it, but I love it." And so that's why fashion is so fascinating, because it's always constantly changing, and it can mix and match through the styling to represent who you really are, to present or your true character and true beings. So to create a new society within fashion metaverse, it's actually super complicated. And to create the fashion metaverse that can tell the story and represent fashion's past, today, and future, we feel it's really a great responsibility, because it's not only about the fashion or the garments. It's more about the human, the people inside, and the environment that's all make fashion work together. And so our team really works super hard to create the best digital version of humans, of ourselves, with freedom of representing who we truly are or who we wish to be through styling, garments, or inclusivity, culture, all these elements, and not losing the beauty of humanity. I think the most fun moment that I remember is we're kind of having a lot of references with different team members and start to see, so why this is beauty and why this looks not human. We start to study ourselves and see, oh, so actually the distance between the eyes or eyebrow or the front, like there are small differences and small details can make something beautiful, something feel human. So it's actually a process where we're doing by learning, and we're also learning ourselves through this process. Like, what is beautiful? Why this is beautiful? And why is it different from the other? And all this stuff, all these questions, and also the experience, and how to make the experience feel human, not like robots. So all these small things, it's really a huge job, and we're really grateful to have a really beautiful team, and everyone is so passionate about creating something meaningful and human-centric. I think that is the key, because if in the digital world, we have like infinite imagination of creating things, probably it will go too much, but we try to remain this humanity and the beauty inside the digital world, to feel that it's really a digital representation of ourselves instead of just a fantasy. So yeah, it's a beautiful journey, and we're still working on it, and we will keep improving. This is only the beta version. It's being metaverse, and yeah, really looking forward to the future and the progress of it.
Thank you so much for joining the panel talks. Feel free to visit the galleries, the Impact Design Hub, and the Innovation Hub.